Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continue today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the Gold Standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Thanks for joining us on the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn back together again.
Speaking.
And it is so great to see you.
Present.
Hey, you know what? It was great to see you at that barbecue with Joe Biden's uncle last weekend. That was fun.
What a fiasco. Joke.
His uncle was
Is this guy for real? Is this serious? Is this really happening?
That's our Joe. That's our president, our chairman. All right. Well, we have lots to talk about today. And speaking of corruption.
Yeah, there you go.
We've got the corruption that's being exposed. That is the title of today's show. We are going to jump into all of that. But a man who never spent one day engaging in corruption was former President Richard Nixon.
Never. Never. I didn't do anything.
You did it, right?
I was framed. I was bamboozled.
You were bamboozled. And, I feel bad for you. And you were so bamboozled that back in 1971, President Nixon, you thought, you know what sounds like a great idea? Forget gold backing our currency. Forget that. Let's just create a fiat currency and just have the paper, really the money be worth the paper it's printed on. How about that?
Forget the dollar, Jen. Forget gold. What are you doing after the show?
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we are today.
Yeah.
The title of the show is The Corruption is Being Exposed. I had to check my notes. I'm starting to follow Big Joe's... Jeez, what's happening?
You thought you were on Romper Room and not on the Gold Standard, right?
Jeez. But yeah, I mean, people are asking, why is the price of gold? Why is it going up?
Yeah.
Because it's probably up like 15 to 18% or so over the last 6 months.
Where are we right now for an ounce of gold?
I think it's a little over 2,300, something like that, between 23 and 2,400. And remember, folks, that's the paper price of gold. Mm-hmm. That's the price that banks trade, derivatives and futures contracts back and forth. It's not the actual tangible asset. But a lot of people have been asking lately, well, why is the price of gold going up? And I kind of thought about that. And we all know the reasons that we're going to get into, store of value, our privacy. But I thought about it for a second and I said, the price of gold is revealing the fraud and the corruption of our banking system and our money. It's being exposed.
That's huge.
It's an admission of the fraud and the corruption that's in our system. Now that goes to the banking system. It goes to the political leadership system. It goes to Wall Street. Goes to the bond market. A lot of stuff going on here. And a lot of these other countries, Jen, like you and I have been talking about for a while, they're seeing this. They're seeing this corruption. And they're probably used to it, right? They're seeing this fraud. And when it comes to their money, a lot of these other countries are saying, well, listen, we don't really trust the dollar as much as we used to. Mm-hmm. We don't trust that U.S. debt as much as we used to. But we do trust gold. And a lot of these other countries are settling trades in oil and gold and liquid gas, LNG, in gold. But the main point is outside of the dollar.
Yeah.
And they're doing business in their own local currencies. So whatever you want to call it, Jen, I mean, this is the trend of these countries and people losing faith and trust in our money and in our dollar and in our system. And that is being reflected in a higher gold price. And I thought to myself, well, that's basically the admission of fraud and corruption that's in our monetary system.
So basically what you're saying, and just to put a fine point on it, because I think it's important, people are waking up. They're realizing how corrupt the system is. They're waking up to all the issues that we talk about every single week, and that is bringing that price of gold up.
Well, if you had trust in your dollar, and if you had trust in the banking system and the safety of your money, and you had trust that our government leadership was going to do the right thing when it came to, balanced budgets and spending and deficit spending, then you wouldn't have any problem holding dollars and keeping your money in a system because you trusted it.
Right.
You trusted the money. You trusted that it was going to be a store of value. You were trusting our leadership. But I got to be honest with you, like you said, more and more people are starting to distrust that entire equation. So when you distrust your dollar, when you distrust your paper assets, when you distrust the security that's holding on to and looking and overlooking and keeping track of your nest egg, how could you have trust in something like that when we're being let down?
Right. Over and over and over again.
Over and over and over again. Now, we all know that our money's losing a lot of value. And we all know that the government is going to print a lot more money. And we all know that this debt is getting to a situation where it's out of control. It's
Look at what happened this
exponential.
weekend. I mean, more spending, right, by the government, money we don't have to fund wars that we're not even a part of.
Right. Billions, trillions of dollars. So that's not going to stop. How many times have we talked about that the system is addicted to that? We have leaders that want to buy votes. They want to stay in power. They want to have their agendas continue. And it's all about spending money and making promises that we all know they can't keep.
Right.
So they just pass that along to the next guy, kick the can down the road. Unfortunately, that's caused serious issues and problems for every single everyday American, people like you and I, like producer Mike. He's got IRAs.
Yeah.
He's got old 401ks.
He's sitting on loads of cash.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know he might have gambled a lot of it away, but
I heard
that's
that.
a separate situation. But
Allegedly.
the thing what it is people don't want to gamble with their stocks. They don't want to gamble with their savings. They don't. Not the majority of people. That's their nest egg.
Because it's all we have.
Well, we've tried to do the right thing. We've tried to, be responsible. And there's just a fear of distrust. And are my assets going to disappear, or are they going to almost be worthless? Or how could I trust the system when we're going to be 50 or 60 or $100 trillion in debt very soon? And how could I trust a system where the interest on that debt is in the trillions?
And you're borrowing money just to pay it.
Right.
It's crazy.
So everything is debt. There's too many dollars. Is it any wonder that the price of gold was $300 20 years ago, and now the price of gold is a factor of 8, close to $2,400 in the same time span?
I don't care what your wife says, Ken. You're onto something here.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, a lot of the people we speak to, they're smart people, but the writing's on the wall. But I'm just hoping that people are taking what's going on seriously enough. And if you had $1 from 20 years ago, how much is that worth? Half?
I know.
50 cents?
If you're lucky.
So why would that trend not continue? And there's a lot of people that feel, me being one of them, that it may even accelerate because the bubble is now so big and the debt situation is so out of control.
Yeah.
We're spending $1 trillion that we don't have every 100 days.
It makes you wonder really what's next for us.
It's not sustainable.
Right.
It's not sustainable. So when you're talking about your savings and you're talking about your nest egg and you're talking about trust in your money, don't you want that to be somewhat sustainable? So the thing that has the longest track record of being real money and surviving in its original form is gold. So if you want a portion of your assets that is reliable and is sustainable, and everything else is so fake, and if you want something that's real, those are the people that are turning to at least a portion of their assets into gold.
And you can do it. I think it's a good time to mention, because Midas Gold Group, they are America First Patriots. They are veteran owned. They're not a call center. So you're going to actually call and talk to a real human being. When you do, you can even stop in and see them face to face and get to know them so that you can really go through your options to find out what works best to preserve your wealth, to get you away from the chaos of this system, the corruption of the system that we're talking about. 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-4653. That's the number for Midas Gold Group. There are storefronts in Thousand Oaks,
and
Phoenix,
across
Arizona.
the street from Deer Valley Airport in Phoenix. Yeah, it's almost like the man behind the curtain, Jen, is being exposed.
Right, you're seeing the wizard. That? You're seeing the Wizard of Oz, basically.
Yeah, and he's pulling all these levers and stuff. And when we think about it, a lot of people always say, too, well, Ken, my money is just digits on a screen at a bank. I mean, I know paper money has merit, Jen.
Yeah.
It's losing a lot of that value, of course. It's dwindling.
You still have it, right.
But gold is a store of value, and our dollars are definitely not. And I just want people to keep it really simple. But this is a very important time. And I think that these decisions that we make here over the next little while are going to affect the next 10 or 20 years. It's that important. So I would just really urge people to understand that, diversify and move some money around while you can, because I think there's going to come a time where we're not going to be able to do that. We may be stuck.
And let's talk about that, because there is an issue, and we have just a minute left here in the segment, but the corruption that you're talking about, corruption today, we're talking about it. Bank corruption is real, right? There is corruption
Absolutely.
at the bank, corruption with the government. Maybe they switch us to a digital system in order for the greater good. I mean, there's lots of reasons to think that this might be an issue moving forward, right?
Yeah, and if these systems fail, we're stuck. We don't want to be negative thinking, but, of course we want the best for our country, and we don't want anybody to lose what they have. But what if we're stuck? We can't access our money. We all know that this digital system is going to fail.
Right.
Is this the last middle finger that we get before, these evil people who hate us, disappear into the night, so to speak?
Isn't that crazy, that have driven us into the ground legitimately? Financially, at least.
Seems that way.
Yeah.
It definitely seems that way. So I would tell people to do something about it. And gold is a way to keep your sovereignty, keep your freedom, and give yourself a chance to financially survive.
Yeah, it keeps you away from the chaos of the system. This is about wealth preservation. You want to make sure that you protect the wealth, the money that you've worked so hard to earn, and that it's going to be there for you so that you can use it when you need it. We all have a certain number that we think of as a nest egg for ourselves, right, that we're going to use. But think about it. If the value of the dollar continues to go down, what does that mean for your investments? We need to take real precautions here to make sure that what you want to have there is really going to be there for you.
Yeah, and we know it's going to continue to go down, the value of our money. So that means our savings is dwindling. The purchasing power that we have is dwindling. You got to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
You have to stop the bleeding. And for a portion of your IRA, a portion of an old 401k, some savings that you have at the bank, or maybe a CD or a money market or something, it's imperative that you try to consider diversifying at least a portion of that. Give us a call and we can go over your situation.
Yep, and it takes it away from the banks. It puts it in your control so you can get it when you need it. Call Midas Gold Group today, 855-322-4653, 855-322-GOLD. Always check out online for all the resources at MidasGoldGroup.com. That's MidasGoldGroup.com, 855-322-GOLD. More up ahead, it's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications, the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on the Gold Standard. You can create your own Gold Standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Welcome back. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo, Jennifer Horn, back together again. We thank you all for joining us. And Ken, it's always great to see you because you come in with some news that sometimes just stuns me. When I think you can't,
I don't make it up, Jen.
You don't. But when I think you feel like you just can't believe something, and it just gets worse and worse. So this story that you brought in today, the Securities and Exchange Commission, we all know about the SEC, right?
We would hope so.
Apparently, they're doing some data collection. You want to explain this?
Well, there was recently a lawsuit filed, and it says the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, is illegally collecting data of every U.S. citizen who invests in the stock market according to their Social Security number, and then is sharing that data with over 3,000 different independent contractors.
This is wild.
We talk about privacy all the time, though, Jen, and we talk about having your paper assets, and we're going towards a system where it's going to be, watched, observed, monitored. But
everything is already.
But then
going
we
in that
already
direction.
talked about the banks are already sharing information with government agencies without us knowing. And now we're talking about the SEC is sharing our information with different organizations. It's already happening. So, why wouldn't you want some privacy and say, hey, listen, there's no way in the world I would want to have all my assets in a system where I have no privacy? Everything is monitored. Everything is going to be watched. Why would anyone care what I do in the stock market? Seriously.
Is it fair? So I have to tell you. So my dad. His dad was one of the smartest people that I know. Never went to day one of college. Got out of high school. He was hard of hearing. No one ever knew that he was hard of hearing. They just thought he was dumb. But he was really, truly one of the smartest people I met. He just struggled with his hearing. He had a disability. But he made a life for himself. He made a life for my dad. He created a beautiful family, a beautiful legacy. And he used to say something that just got into my mind. He used to say, you have to be your own doctor. You have to be your own lawyer. You have to be your own auto mechanic, basically touting the importance of personal responsibility. Listening to you talk today, and almost always, we always talk about how the people that are supposed to be protecting us have really failed us. They're selling us all out. All of our elected leaders, the SEC, they're all selling us out. So at this point, when I think about gold, I think about my grandpa and about bringing that responsibility back to yourself. You don't have to trust the rest of the world if you have the ability to protect yourself and your family outside of all of that corruption. Isn't that a fair statement?
Yeah.
He's brilliant.
And I know that we speak about financial things, although we're not financial advisors or we're not given financial advice. We're talking about what could you do to protect a portion of your money. Because when you look at the financial picture of the United States right now, Jen, it's a bleak picture. It's very bleak. The debt situation is bleak. The leadership situation is bleak. The banking system in Wall Street, we know that there's corruption there. And then you have somebody like Jamie Dimon, who's recently come out and obviously runs the biggest bank in the world, J.P. Morgan Chase. Obviously an ultra successful guy.
Sure.
But now he's coming out and said, oh, well, listen, you should have probably listened to Trump. He did do some good things. But on the other hand, we really need to prepare for what's coming because what's coming is going to be worse than anything that we've ever seen. So, are these guys just hedging their bets? I don't know. See, I told you so. While I was been ripping you off for decades.
Right.
But see, now I told you so. It doesn't matter to me. All that matters to me is that you have to see the writing on the wall.
The system's not working for us anymore. We're
It's
working
not.
for the system, essentially. And that's why it's important to give yourself a little protection from that.
And we all know who's going to be left holding this debt bag. And we all know that it's the inflation that we're going to experience with all of these trillions of dollars that's coming still of debt and printed money. We haven't gone through the worst part of it yet.
That's story number 2. Really this week is this spending. And we saw Congress pass it in a bipartisan way. This is Democrats and Republicans. That's what makes it so disappointing, is that there aren't a lot of people standing up for our money and for our interests. But you have this bipartisan bill. They spend millions, billions, trillions of dollars sending aid everywhere to every other country. Meanwhile, we're here, our borders open, our people are suffering.
Does any of these things, does it benefit the average patriot who's paying their taxes and who's listening to this show?
And if so, how? How does it benefit us? You can't find a way. And so I think this is where people are waking up and they're going, this is not in our best interest. Joe Biden is having trouble with young people. He's seeing himself suffer in young people now in the polls for the presidential race. So what happens, Ken? He starts forgiving student loan debt. He doesn't have the power to do that.
Yeah. And
all
then it
they're
also
doing
said
is spending our money again.
Bidenomics is costing households $11,400 more per year. Nearly 1 in 3 Americans right now has no retirement savings at all.
Yeah.
Corporate defaults are happening at the fastest pace since the great financial crisis in 2008. And I actually saw an article today. It talked about commercial real estate foreclosures are
been
starting
hearing
to
about it.
soar. Mm-hmm. And who owns most of these commercial real estate loans?
Yeah.
Banks.
Banks do. And guess what happens to the banks when those start to go down?
Well,
Big problems.
that's inevitable. So, like I said, we don't wish any ill will to our great country, but when it comes to money, like I said, the financial picture of our money and this country right now is bleak.
Yeah, and it's not sustainable. But there is some good news, and this is why we do this show, because as crazy as stuff gets and the spending, and you found a number, and I think it's worth repeating before we move on, our border's wide open. You've got illegal immigrants going into, every city, not just big cities. But in New York City, what are we spending per day for every illegal immigrant that's there in the city?
Close to $400 per day.
How are we doing? I mean, it's not sustainable, which is what you said. But here's the good news. There is something that you can do right now. And that's why we talk about the power of gold, the power of adding silver and precious metals to your investment portfolio, because it does still remain a private transaction if you're concerned about privacy, as we're talking about. It is outside of the banking system. It does protect you from all the overspending because it's a store of value. These are the reasons that we say, yes, it sounds pretty bleak, but there is still some hope for us.
Yeah, and we're including silver too.
Yeah, of course.
Tangible assets. And that's why there's a big movement going on from especially conservative-minded people that they're taking some money out of the financial system and they feel better holding a tangible asset. Just like these central banks of the world.
Yeah.
Not too difficult to understand why. I mean, so listen, I would really urge people today that it's more important right now, more than ever, to protect at least a portion of your assets and diversify. You can't have all of your assets wrapped up in a system that's dying.
Different buckets, right?
Full
You got
of
to protect
corruption,
yourself.
full of fraud, losing a lot of value. Our dollar is dwindling. And we're not even talking about anything at this particular moment that's happened that's bad. Yes, banks were closing last year ago, and there was a little bit of a panic. So they came up with these different programs to help support the banks. But the damage is still there, and it's getting worse. And as long as we see these interest rates continue to creep up, it's only a matter of time before a very bad financial situation develops, either here or somewhere else in the world. And as we all know, it's connected. So while you still can, like I said, Jen, God, gold, and guns, God, gold, and guns, and a little food, I would really urge people to kind of start thinking along those lines. And while they still can, move some money out of the bank, move some money out of the stock market or the bond market, move an IRA or an old 401k. Give yourself an opportunity to have a stash of gold and a stash of silver somewhere. It'll be there when you need it. And typically, based on a long track record, it's going to hold your purchasing power and potentially be worth a lot more 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
855-322-4653. That's the number to call Midas Gold Group. 855-322-4653. Take that power back, put it back in your home. Get the God, the gold, the guns. It works.
Sense, right?
It makes sense. 855-322-4653 for Midas Gold Group. You can also check out MidasGoldGroup.com. There are some great resources there. You can see podcasts and you can see Ken's articles every single week, and look at their product catalog at MidasGoldGroup.com. You can even text the word gold to 232425. Midas gets right back to you. And then we always talk about the power of face-to-face. You can come to Thousand Oaks and visit Midas. You can go to Phoenix, Arizona and visit them there. And when people come in, what is their one greatest fear? We've only got about 30 seconds here, Ken.
Well, their fear is that they can trust somebody, and their fear is that they could get a fair deal.
Yeah.
And their fear is they want to deal privately. They don't want people sharing their information. So, like I tell people, you're in good hands.
Absolutely.
That's how we've built our business. That's how we run our day-to-day operations. If you have the advantage to do it in person, take advantage of that situation. If not, call us on the phone. We can talk about your situation privately.
Yeah.
We can deliver your gold and your silver privately and anonymously. In my opinion, it puts you in a much better situation versus doing nothing at all.
Yeah, just hoping that nothing happens.
Right.
855-322-4653. Call the folks over at Midas Gold Group. 855-322-4653. America First. Patriots at Midas Gold Group. 855-322-GOLD. Always at MidasGoldGroup.com. That's MidasGoldGroup.com. Thanks for joining us. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.